This is the June 11th meeting of the Portsmouth Housing.
Recording in progress.
I jumped the gun twice. This is the June 11th meeting of the Portsmouth Housing Committee, and I'll take the roll. We have Jen Stebbins.
Here.
Andrew Simonis.
Here.
Eric Weinreb. Here. Eric Anderson is not able to make it. Byron Maddow is not able to make it. Dagan Migردich is not able to make it. Joanna Kelly is not able to make it. President Mary Lone and
Angus McDonald.
Angus McDonald,
Caitlin McGrath Levesque.
and
Councilor
Caitlin
Beth
Lebeck are not present. So we don't have a quorum.
It sounded like Mary.
Do we now?
June 11, aren't
No, I was like, there's only 5 cars in this parking lot.
we? And Mary Lone, we were just taking the roll. Thanks for coming. How's the baby?
Good. She's good. Thank you.
Did you have a baby?
I did.
Is that?
Yeah, she's 7 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's so fun.
Joanna and I asked the staff to take the dot voting that we did last time, which you guys did swiftly after some deliberation, and to rank everything. And Peter and the team have added short or long term and staff comments. So since we didn't really have a chance to discuss that last time, I would just put that into discussion. I think what comes up to the top is strong support to move ahead on RSA 79E in the city. So our role would be to get a proposal in front of the council. And then we also have some other short-term action that we can take. So, since this is a pretty informal thing, my thought is that we could talk about each of these short-term areas in terms of the outcomes that we want to see, and then we could look at the longer term ones and maybe get some input from staff on how those play with the master plan.
Right. I added a couple more columns.
Oh.
Just for tonight, for their implementation strategies and then a time frame, because we're due to have this housing action plan back to the council in July, or that was the directives from the council. And we're thinking if we could get some more input from the committee, then we could develop a draft for the committee for the July meeting to forward to council.
Okay. So I think going through and
Going through.
leading that would be great. Jerry Duffy is here. He asked me as chair for some public comment time. If the committee feels that's okay, we can do that now, or we can hold on.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Hopefully quick. Are these in any certain order?
Well, the first ones, the ones that are ranked are in order from the dot voting,
Yeah.
and then after that, no.
Okay. As it pertains to 79E, obviously we want to make a recommendation for that. Is that something where we're just saying, hey, we want to expand this, or are we identifying certain zones within Portsmouth to do that? Or are we just saying, this is where we'd like to start, let's then go get language or directions from Dover and other municipalities who have done it?
Well, I think, you know, specifically for the like housing opportunity zones, it would be good to get feedback from this committee to the council on where you think those zones might be. You know, if you wanted to include all of the gateway, from a staff perspective, we were thinking of the Route 1 bypass from the traffic circle to the memorial, to the middle bridge.
Yeah.
Because really that's the main area of the city that is, could use it. But it could be expanded to the gateway zone, and that would hopefully incentivize people to do, that would make workforce housing maybe more doable for some, if they got
Okay.
tax breaks, but that's up for discussion.
Let's hang on to
Yeah.
that, because that's a good discussion. Did you guys want to have a little time with Jerry now, or?
I'm okay with getting that public input before we go too far, just to hear what
Great.
they have to say.
Okay. Jerry?
I was hoping you wouldn't say no.
No pressure, Jerry.
Thank you very much, John, the committee. So I've been working on the Housing Action Plan all along, and I've been following your work, and I really appreciate what you're doing. So there's kind of what I see, and this is kind of a view from outside the committee, is that there's a narrative forming here, and it seems to be forming around 79E as a very, potentially a strong driver for aspects of housing needs. Because, whatever type of housing we're talking about, whether it's market rate ADUs or multifamily conversions or large permanently affordable workforce housing like the Ruth Griffin Place, it's all got to make financial sense. Otherwise, nothing happens. ADU won't happen. Conversions won't happen. Large projects won't happen. Just one note on that before I'll continue. I'm just jumping somewhere else. But the last couple of months, I mentioned to Andrew, a couple of young developers have contacted me, and they're interested. They're young guys, both live in the city. They've got money to invest in housing. They're interested in doing housing. They're interested in doing small projects, multifamily projects, and they're looking to also, they have this kind of commitment that they want to help with the city's housing crisis. They're coming from the cohort that's been affected the most, and they just feel like they've got a civic obligation, it seems like to me. So that's something to bear in mind as continue here. So the parts of 79E that will produce the kinds of housing we want could be supported by a citywide opportunity zone. There is a precedent for that, and I think the question will be: is there anything to lose by doing that? And then the committee, would need to, if 79E is adopted, the committee has to, of course, put together the zoning changes that would enable that ordinance to be useful. And so what I'm visualizing, given the constraints, which is the time constraint, resources, number of meetings left, is that it could conceivably be a kind of a tight package, compact package of relatively few action items built around this tax relief mechanism. And I know from 45 years of being in the private sector that unless you set clear goals and have outcomes and people responsible ways to measure progress, then things usually die on the vine or don't happen. So I remember one of the RKG consultants telling me that the goal of a single overall number of housing units is less effective than a more granular approach. For example, if we see a natural flow of maybe a dozen ADUs a year, give or take, we could set a target to increase that by 100%. Analysis of the city's capacity for multifamily conversions could set a goal of, say, 5 projects a year where we're converting either to duplex or triplex. duplex or a quadruplex. And then the true affordability projects at scale like PHAs are the hardest to implement because the capital stacks are so complicated, and there are a limited number of potential sites. However, you've already identified a couple of city-owned sites in your previous incarnation, and over and above the Kane land swap project. And there's more potential, for instance, if Walmart decides to consolidate, it could open up a big parcel in Portsmouth that could be interesting. And the city can't make affordable housing happen, but it can have zoning and incentive package that would be more likely to make this stuff happen. So you're creating an environment where the investment makes sense right across from the homeowners to that middle ground where the conversions all the way to the large projects at the end. So for instance, you could make a commitment to initiate 2 or 3 large-scale projects over the next 18 months before the current term runs out. So that's kind of view from what I've been watching, and it just seems like it would be a doable proposition. So I hope you'll give that some thought.
I would propose that we proceed by going down the list and looking at, as Peter said, implementation and time frame. Get some discussion so that we can help these guys draft that. And 79E comes right up first. The committee feels that's a good way to proceed.
When we talked about 79E, or when we are talking about it, do we mean all 5 of the sub A, B, C, D, E all the way down?
It's up to you all. I mean, they're different. I mean, I think we were thinking that housing opportunity zone was kind of the, but
The
if you wanna,
easiest
if you
one.
want to add others, I mean, or
Well, like coastal resiliency is very nice. I don't know if it adds a ton of housing.
Right.
But listen, I'm all for throwing the book at it, and it still is limited by what council ends up approving, both at the level of 79E, and I think that any particular project would need to be approved by council too. But I just wasn't sure do we focus on one first just to get one done?
Councilor Moreau, any thoughts?
Sorry I was late. And my computer keeps shutting all my PDFs on me. I've like opened it 6 times.
Well, you're busy.
Let them shut down.
Too many closings tomorrow. My thoughts are always to I'd like to try to find a creative way to use the housing opportunity zones to be able to do Member Weibert's original idea of the existing multifamily housing. How can we take advantage of possible tax breaks for lower rent? I don't know if there's a way to do that, but it would be really great to sort of take a dive into whether or not that is feasible and doable. I love the coastal resiliency piece. I think trying to help the people that are trying to do these expensive things around the water, because water just eats away at everything, is also a really good one. My big question about making it blanket is there a project that would get built whether it was there or not? And are we losing out that way? And so that's my big fear, I guess, with doing it citywide. But those were the kinds of ideas that I had that I thought would really be great to incorporate in. I mean, there's probably more parts of 79E, but those are my initial 2 things that I thought would really make a hit, or at least a possibility of moving the needle forward.
So, with respect to your idea number 1, which is how to create a tax incentive to keep affordable housing affordable, does that work under 79E? Because my understanding was that you needed to have an additional.
If we were going to do it straight, like under the tax incentives, like veterans and all of that, yes, we need enabling legislation. but I'm hopeful that we could creatively create something under 79E that would work.
So,
I know, I'm being creative.
So for
I'm not
example,
sure it's possible,
I'm
but
thinking about Jerry's chart that had one of the columns was, you know, you have to add additional investment into it, and I'm trying to think if, I thought that they were all yes.
what is to the degree that you have to add additional investment? Maybe there is some minimal investment in some of these
new
things.
heating system or.
Right, something that already
Something-
needs to be done.
Something low bar that's not
Low
gonna
bar.
push it into
Right.
a high-end development.
so let's say like Osprey Landing has a bunch of
Buildings.
low rent units. And so we could go to the owner and say, why don't you recapitalize this and guarantee that you'll keep the low rent units
Yeah.
in exchange for this 79E tax rate.
I mean, that's my broad
That's-
brush and my vision of it.
I'm right with you, Eric, on that one.
But then the tax break is only on whatever money that they put into the building.
I
It's
mean,
only
not
on that
necessarily.
incremental value.
I mean, that's not what I was hoping. I was hoping that it was on the property so that it makes it viable for them. If it's just on that investment,
Well, I think that's the way that 79E is written, is whatever incremental value you add to the property won't be taxed. That tax is abated. So it doesn't change your tax bill today. It just doesn't make your tax bill higher after you put investment in.
Right? It freezes your valuation.
Right.
Right. And I think that's kind of was the idea,
it
is
also
to
does-
freeze the valuation.
But it also applies to new developments,
No, it can apply to existing.
and it applies to new developments.
It can apply to new development.
Yeah.
So that would be more of a conflict, although I am a believer and subscriber to that mechanism to enable developments. There is still an imbalance of our tax revenue between single-family residential and multi-family commercial developments. And that has never been more vocal and vocalized than in the last month and a half to 6 months. So if we're looking at, yes, the rehab component, of the revitalization of it, then yes, of course. If it's the new development, I feel as though the public would be a little bit confused as to why we're already giving a developer subsidies to create more units.
But if you can somehow income restrict a portion of those units,
Totally.
which is what this does allow.
That's the
You
public
say,
benefit.
we're investing as Portsmouth in not collecting some taxes from you in exchange for having,
Yeah.
for say 15 years, in exchange for having income restricted units for 30 years.
And you can negotiate those
Yeah.
pieces as well as how many units, how long it is, and whether or not you freeze the tax value as it was prior to development or prior to any sort of.
And
Building.
like I said, I'm definitely a subscriber to it. I just want it to be worthwhile and have
Yep.
that same impact.
Worthwhile to who? Who are you worried about?
The community. Like, is the city standing to benefit from gaining those workforce units that we previously were not getting by giving the development the tax break? I think so.
Right.
I just don't know.
But no tax money that they're paying now would be lost. You simply wouldn't get
Sure.
the future.
Sure.
We'd have so many years where it wouldn't increase. It's the trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Is the trade-off worth it? That's what he's really saying.
And you have to go through a process of, a public process, where you say to the community, here's the benefit statement, this many affordable housing units in exchange for a tax relief.
Fair enough.
And, and then that goes through a public process, and if people want to protest against that.
you're talking about changing how we regulate it, or on a case by case, as someone comes in with an application that there's a public
Case
process.
by case. The
Yeah, I think
process,
that's the
we need
important thing here.
We need to understand, I mean, we may be getting ahead of ourselves, but we can't make that process too complicated. Otherwise,
They won't do it.
they just won't do it.
Yes, but also, nobody's gonna do anything if we don't have enabling legislation, like if we don't, I guess the legislation's there, if we don't have an ordinance that says we can even consider this stuff.
Right, but we gotta, yes, and but we have to be thoughtful how we craft it so that it just doesn't become a useless ordinance.
It's not.
Sort of like when we first put workforce housing downtown and nobody built us any, right? That was useless.
Yes.
I'll equate it to that.
I don't think we did get a single one.
Not a single one. I absolutely highly agree. I was part of that whole process and not a single one.
So, yes, and.
One last question, a little bit more granular. In the New Hampshire law, it says at 80% or less of the AMI. Previously in Portsmouth, we've done 100 or 110%. Are we stating that we would do 80?
Is that in the RSA, the 80%?
Yes.
For housing opportunity zone?
But I think the municipality can go off of that if they want.
And that's what I'm asking. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that we've had discretion over it before because they were density bonuses, but I don't know if that is true if we're utilizing a very specific RSM.
No less than 1/3 of the housing units constructed shall be designated for households with an income of 80% or less of the area median income.
Am I interpreting that correct?
Yeah. Mhm. And I didn't realize it said 1/3.
Yes, it's a big number.
So that is a substantially different underwriting mechanism than just the 100 to 110%.
But I think I hate to, I think it's reasonable.
You're going to make a lot of fans that way.
Yeah.
We just haven't done it that way before, and so developers would have to adjust to that again.
Because, when you're talking about incentive bonuses and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
that's at 100% AMI?
Specifically, West End Yards and the Sage condominiums have done 100 or 110%.
For purchase.
Well,
Sage
But I
was
know-
purchase, 100%
West End
land.
Yards was rent.
West End Yards was the one we negotiated on, yes.
There you go. But I don't know if we can change that. I really just a question.
But at the same time, we're giving something else back besides. We're giving them a lower tax bill moving forward.
Yeah, not just the right to build it.
Right, not just the right to spend the money. It's a different give and take.
You get a vacant plot of land and you can build 100 units on it and 33 of them have to be 80% AMI, but you're being taxed like it's a vacant plot of land for 10 years.
For whatever years those are
It's
affordable.
really substantial.
If it's not something that we're enabling, then it wouldn't exist.
Well, that's part of it, is you have to prove that the but for this tax relief. I hesitate to use that term because I don't want to get people confused, but for this RSA, then you wouldn't be able to build it.
This is the difference maker.
Now, that's gonna require council to figure out if that's true or not, but.
Again, for sure, really on board with that. Just want to make sure that we're understanding how that's going, how that conversation has to
No,
go.
it's a good discussion. We're thrashing it out.
Yeah.
Christmas tree shops. If we'd been able to,
I was disappointed they did not take density, that our density allowable wasn't even achieved, let alone, that's my frustration. We allow more by right, they didn't even get that high. That's my sad part of that.
I don't know.
I mean,
It's a hypothetical.
throw a baseball across the highway and they're getting 0 housing units, so. I'll take that.
You're saying, would we have gotten affordable housing at
Would they have at least entertained the idea?
Oh, no, I
Prescott
asked, they
Plains,
said,
Prescott
Yes.
Post? Thank you.
not to worry, I asked at planning board, they said no.
Right, but we didn't have this.
Right, we did not.
Well, so that's how the housing opportunity zone works. Peter is saying, define the zone as what, bypass, down the bypass.
Right, well, we were looking at areas that were kind of prime for redevelopment, that stretch along there is really the only part of the city that's,
Lighted?
if you wanna call it.
North side?
Why wouldn't you just do the whole city like Jerry suggested?
Yeah, I was gonna, like Conway says, the whole town except
The downtown or something.
places that flood.
Which
Could be downtown.
oh,
Not all in downtown. But yeah, I mean, why not? It's gonna find its place where it belongs, so why not restrict, why restrict the location?
Yeah. Somebody may have a commercial building that they're ready to convert to housing. That could be in any of the commercial zones.
But I guess you wouldn't wanna have it in that, the residential zones that are just single family.
I don't think you have the
I mean, yeah, right, you
space
can't,
and.
you can't. So,
they wouldn't use it
limit it
there.
to mixed-use districts or,
Could you pressure test that for a second? If there was a place where a triplex was allowed,
Mhm.
and it was in a current residential zone, then you could build 3 units and just have one income restricted and get the tax break. And
It's the GRC. Oh, they're
So-
talking like SRB, SRA. So those single family versus we have multi-family
Municipal
residential
zone.
districts too.
But, Andrew, go ahead.
Because it's related. One of our other criterias or things that, what would you call it? Housing action items would be lot size and dimensional requirements, and then allowing subdivision of existing larger houses or larger lots. And I feel as though that is a better descriptor than just blanketing with 79E or opportunity zone. Because it applies more so to specific zones like SRA and SRB. And so it prescribes a better outcome rather than just saying, oh, let's see what happens. Although I get that, and that is an economic test and a pressure test more than anything, but I feel as though looking at specific zones like SRA and SRB, we can find better outcomes through like a 2-unit or a triplex being done there rather than let's see what somebody comes up with.
Well, it's both and, isn't it? I mean, you need the zoning relief to allow.
Yeah, I'm just saying like
free, but if you had the,
they're parallel, but they're 2 different columns in my head. The opportunity zones is more of a massing, and then the lot size and dimensional requirements in SRA, SRB is a specific answer to something that we've been asking for a long time.
I guess the question I would ask would be, how would you ever get market rate or below market units in those conversions to triplexes?
You wouldn't. That's
Without the incentive,
no, you probably wouldn't have many people doing that.
And that's why I was thinking that you just blanket it, because it's gonna take care of itself where it works.
But we could take single-family residential districts, allow 2 ADUs, but one of them has to be at workforce housing levels. That's what
Is that
Dover,
now just a
Dover did that.
multi-family property though?
it is, but it's in single-family neighborhoods. It's just a different vehicle to get to the same place and get us workforce housing.
Fair thought. Would you still require that the owner lives there?
Yes, because that's part of the ADU.
one of the,
In one of
That's
the
why
units.
it's not multi-family.
Well,
It's
it
still
probably can't be in the
multifamily.
affordable unit.
Right, they'd have, right,
unless
they
they
could not
can
be in the
show-
affordable unit, that would be, they have to rent the affordable unit and rent one of the other 2 market units, yes.
A little asterisk.
Leaving a quilt with holes in it.
It's been done and I've heard it's successful, but
Yeah.
I don't know how truly successful it is, but we could look into it as an option.
so what I'm hearing is, Andrew, you had felt it's better to add density in the neighborhoods with specific for SRB, SRA kind of language. But we're also discussing, if you had that, and that was part of the housing opportunity zone, you might pick up some below market rate units.
That could be the case. I guess I would point, I'm not very strong in any of these opinions, so feel free to push me off with them. I would point to the ADU example and how we've changed the ADU policies and permitting procedures, and I don't think we've gotten that many, but that's a very measurable outcome.
When we first changed it, we actually got probably 3 times the applications coming in. That was several years ago. That I don't know off the top of my head, but I do remember looking at the numbers and it was fairly strong.
Yeah, I recall that as well, and I think we arrived that there were not that many built, and so
Because it was expensive.
Expensive.
And so that's my conundrum, is even though we've greased the wheels towards this solution, it's still reactive. And you need participation from the market that is actually going to be the ones doing it.
But aren't the finances probably different than like your standard single-family homeowner trying to put an ADU in than a developer? Like, the money is different. So it doesn't,
Yeah, for sure.
so like, I think the market still will like help play it out in the way that the ADU can. Like the financing is just different than like your average homeowner. So I don't know if it makes sense to caution against working towards this because the lack of ADUs that were built after.
Yeah, and I
this change.
apologize if it wasn't clear. I was really just still focusing on the SRA, SRB, lot size dimension, things like that. Because Beth had suggested that maybe people would take it upon themselves to separate their lots or homes into one or two additional units and then restrict one to be income based. And so that to me is similar to the ADU path that we've already taken and not gotten great results from.
He doesn't think we'll get good results by asking for two,
I'm not a pessimist,
or
I'm just,
allowing.
I'm using the data we've had for 7 years.
So is that a separate zoning change from 79E?
That would be separate, yeah.
Yeah, I would also wrap into that MRO.
Yeah.
And this may anger a few people, but we have a zone in the city that I believe it's a 5-acre minimum.
Yes.
Rural.
Little Harbor Road,
Yeah.
there's a lot of land down
I'll not provide any more comment after that.
there. That would
But
be an interesting
That's
debate.
excessive. Granite Creek Farm's not doing anything, I can tell you that.
Peter, what else do you think through when you're thinking about like questions you have as we develop something here?
For 79E or for? Well, I mean, we had really just talked about identifying where in the city we'd want housing opportunity zones, and then,
Everywhere.
everywhere. I mean, if it's that, then it's easy. We were hoping, in talking with, we'd asked RKG, because we're still working on that HOP 2 grant, and, that if we had it in the gateway, it would hopefully incentivize more workforce housing, because they could also get the incentives, but then the tax deferral, then it might,
A double benefit.
right. That was kind of our hope.
That would
If
be-
we go everywhere, then we do
If
it
we go everywhere,
anyway.
then yeah, it includes all of that. So.
I think that's a good approach.
Seems, I mean, if you take that as the rebuttable presumption, right? You know, why is there a reason not to do that?
Especially because council gets this say at the end.
On a project by project basis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a blank check. It's like, come to us with your ideas. To your point, I do think that having a standard set of like, if you do this, you will be approved is helpful, but letting the market sort of say where that would work makes sense. And it's 10-year abate under the housing opportunity zone. It's 10-year abatement of taxes, and is it a 20-year?
How long they have to stay below market?
Yeah.
It could be.
I think the minimum is 15.
But didn't I just read in what you said that it was 10 years? I know, Jerry, I should have printed out your chart.
I'm talking about the difference
Or
between
up to 10 years.
the
I
common.
think you can add it for different, like if you provide more workforce housing, you can maybe get.
You can extend it.
It might be a cap, but it might be.
That was what I thought
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
And when we had Brian Pope here, he said that when they've used it in Dover, they really simplified the certification of below market.
That's a big thing too, because it can be expensive.
To get a unit approved.
Yeah, this is
To
what,
just like make somebody every year show you how much they make and then, you know, income verify
Yeah.
and go to the city and, you know, prove that you.
he said, we check it up front and then let it ride. I think the developer has to.
How does PHA handle it? Same way?
No.
It's annual.
It also allows for like a diversity of housing residents.
Yeah.
So it's like, I have a friend that lives in a unit like that, and so she got in when she was making specific income, and now as long as she's still there, she has that rent control.
Sure.
And so it allows for different incomes within a building, it creates a different sense of community, allows for folks to age in place. It's not necessarily.
Like the PHA one, is people's salaries go up, they have to leave, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and there's a lot of,
These city staff, as they got a raise, have to leave, right?
so there are ways
Yeah.
to simplify. So far, we're hearing citywide housing opportunity zone. The other parts of 79E are the coastal resilience. Less,
Can you explain what that means and?
I believe it's tax abatement for improving or renovating your home in such a way that will help it not flood.
You have to be in the
That's the
flood zone.
simplest way I can say it.
I assume you have to be in the flood zone.
Yeah, you have to be, I believe, either close to a body of water or where it's proven to be if you're at Prescott Park, that is pretty well proven to be
layers
an
ring.
area that can flood. So
I'm just struggling with that.
it's homeowners who just don't have the amount of money to be able to put into that. That helps them at least by not having to, for a period of time, pay an increase because the house becomes more valuable. Now they freeze their tax valuation for a period of time. to
It
help
was just
recoup
passed
that.
in Hampton. They haven't, the select board hasn't implemented it yet, but at a place like Hampton, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Hampton, it makes sense. I feel like
Different.
waterfront homes in Portsmouth are not in that same economic
Yeah.
value.
I gotta say, I'm in agreement with that.
I just feel like we can use our
I think
energy somewhere else.
The optics of
The optics are not great.
somebody with a
Glad you said it.
$4 million house on the water getting a tax break.
4.
Yeah, for something that common sense to do anyway.
What about office conversion? That I think is,
Another
I think it's a really, that's an interesting one.
I think that's a great one.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
What about just resilience, like sustainability? I had this question today.
Is that like, is it within,
Is it within it? I don't know. But somebody asked me today if they were to do a multifamily development of a sizable amount of units, 50 plus, and they were to make it sustainable, as in close to net zero, would they receive any tax advantages or benefit from the city? And I think the answer is no. At least it has been in the past.
Other than there are tax breaks, they take the value off of your assessed value for solar panels.
Sure.
But that's about all that I'm aware of.
Just the value of the panels.
Just the value of the panels does not go towards your tax rate, tax valuation.
Marginal. So
It's something.
it's not kickstarting any developments.
No.
So
That's a,
I don't know
New
if
Hampshire way
that's
to do it.
within the 79E. I don't know if that's something to be considered, but that may open it up from coastal resilience to just general
I
sustainability.
think the actual statute is pretty specific about coastal resiliency.
Office conversion.
office conversion. That's a
Yeah.
good example.
those can be expensive just because of the structure of the building.
Yeah, they don't have any bathrooms.
Well, they have bathrooms, they don't have a lot of plumbing.
Just gated out.
They don't have windows.
Yeah.
You have to have windows in bedrooms, and that's the biggest problem with office conversions, which is why
The floor plate doesn't lend itself
It's just-
well.
Yeah.
Many fires have
configuration.
proven that to be.
which is why we tried the co-living as a possible option. It's trying to make
Yeah.
it easier for office conversions, but I haven't seen anyone jumping on that bandwagon but one.
Yeah, I was gonna use Borthwick Ave just to be a really neutral example, because I think everyone, all the others that I can think of, have some attached stigma or whatever. But Borthwick Ave has a lot of office and
Well, when it says commercial, I interpret that as including retail, right? Like if somebody's got a,
Does it say commercial right now? Or just say office? I think that there
It says
is a
OR.
House bill to expand it to.
Bill, for, in the areas that are zoned commercial that don't allow residential, you have to allow multifamily.
And it's
Yeah.
not for industrial, it's just
Not
commercial.
for
Commercial, not industrial.
For the
That would be
purposes of this
law
section,
research.
office
certain
use
town.
means buildings or structures used or intended for use in whole or in part for the practice of a profession, the carrying on of business or occupation, or the conduct of nonprofit organizations or government entity, including co-working spaces.
not retail.
And so should that pass, we have to allow housing in those zones.
Which
They
we
can do it
almost
by
all do
right.
it anyways.
We do it by right.
There's very, very few we don't already, so.
Okay, so we can't use 79E to incentivize retail. That's too bad.
But I don't wanna give up on the office thing. Like, even though I don't think that we can't point to something right now that we all say that would be cool, doesn't mean, back to Eric's point, that if we enable it, that somebody wouldn't come to us and say, I found this creative way to put an atrium in the middle of a building, or, you know, I think about, where Lighthouse used to be. That building was sort of a funky layout, and you could have made that work.
It's a good, near the fish stick plant.
Highly recommend not saying that.
Me too.
But that's a good example.
I mean,
It's sitting there.
the Liberty parking lot.
I know.
That they just expanded.
Without solar.
Kmart
Let's keep
Plaza.
in mind, if they're trying, one of the things that Gateway was really created for was to take those strip malls and be able to, possibly put housing in those areas. And it's happened very little. I mean, it has happened some, we
Where?
have two,
McKinnon's.
Minutes?
McKinnon's
I think that's been
And-
wildly successful from
and
Vibrant.
West End Yards has both. They created it that way. But it hasn't really happened. That's why I said just a little has it happened. So how could we use this to push that a little bit further? Because there's really unused space at all of these strip malls, whether it be
Is
unused
the-
parking or just,
The
Yeah,
tour
is
is an
the
example.
Marshall's Mall, Kmart, is that locally owned?
Okay.
Do these people even know what we're
Where
trying
was
to do?
Kmart?
What
And
area are
they
you
don't
talking
care,
about,
do they?
Eric? Sorry,
Oh,
you're
where are they?
you're talking
Market
20
basket.
years ago. Bring me up to speed.
Home Sense.
I
think is what
Thank you.
I'm stuck,
I thought that was a Bradley.
I'm stuck in
That's the example.
1985.
I thought that was Bradley's, excuse me.
I thought it was Bradley's too.
Right over there, right over there.
Caldor?
It's the Bank East Mall.
And
and-
people who remember Kmart.
Okay, so Home Sense in Burlington.
Pretty sure.
I have seen a proposal to put housing in that parking lot. I don't know if it ever made it to the city, but that was certainly,
It didn't make it to planning board.
it was
I've never
certainly
seen it.
something that somebody was thinking about.
Yeah.
Instead, we
Yeah,
got a
fixed
bank.
it.
I know, instead, no, it's a Citizens Bank. Instead, we got a Citizens Bank that's being built. That's all we got.
But, I mean, again, not out here being pessimist, but you take the Bed Bath & Beyond example and Christmas Tree Shop example, those were giant box retailers that for decades had an incredible run. And now, just not relevant. Is that's the same case for Kmart, Burlington Coat Factory, and HomeSense? I don't know. But that would be the inevitability of that site, would be replacing those big box retailers with housing on that corner or one side of the parcel, because feel as though Market Basket does just fine, and so they're going to remain as is, and then the other side would be pivoted.
And that's because retail is just a complete whirlwind of change.
And, I mean, it's not a secret, Kane has suggested numerous times that with their Commerce Way development, the one that is
Yep.
pending, and then the rest of their offices over there, that would be their ideal scenario, is a neighborhood style development. And so yes, the Market Basket Plaza then becomes even more valuable, or a mixed use component.
If we enact 79E, would that increase the possibility of that happening and creating affordable units? That's, I guess, what I'm trying to get at.
I'm gonna say no personally, but my opinion is such that that owner of that retail plaza is a retail plaza owner, not so much a
Right.
multifamily.
Well, let's take ownership out of it at the moment. Let's assume we have a perfect owner, because maybe it's somewhere else in the city, right? Would that help? Would that push them over to actually investigate and want to look into doing
The
this?
housing opportunity zone?
Yeah.
How could it hurt?
Or the office, right, the office research. I don't know if it can hurt. That's why I'm asking a question. Like, if we had ownership that was interested, say they sell tomorrow,
Yeah,
then
if they don't use it, it didn't hurt them.
Right.
If they use it, it helped them.
I'm just trying to say, how much more can we give them to push that envelope?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Eventually, it's gonna look attractive.
Olorama.
Yeah.
Don't take away Bolarama.
Never, I know.
God, come on. You're pushing the limit.
Children love that.
My kids loved it 20 years ago.
Where did you learn to bowl?
Dover Bowl.
I'm
Just now casinos.
Shooter's Pub in Exeter. So, ways to incentivize commercial plazas.
I think we're leaning towards citywide housing opportunity zones and office conversions. That's what I've heard.
And it's
Yeah.
just housing opportunity zone, it's not opportunity zone.
Right.
Housing.
Got
Very
it.
different.
Very different things.
HOU, which, yeah. I'm trying to think of all the initials. I can't spell it by yet.
Okay, that was my only clarifying.
Do you need anything else from us on this line item, like from the time frame perspective, or?
I don't know, we have two columns, we have short-term and long-term, but.
Yeah.
How do we get a draft of something that we can react to?
Good question, Jack. Should that go through planning board?
So for the record, when this all started, we had asked staff the end of last year to come back with a proposal, and they came back with, there's too much there, you need to narrow
Yeah,
your
what do you want?
focus.
Yes, what.
And so if we narrow our focus and we can
To
go
these
back
two.
down to the staff, then maybe a proposal comes back here that then goes through the boards. But I think that's, because we need legal and planning to both kind of look at it and make sure it jives. But is that narrow enough? Is it not narrow enough? There's the questions.
Well, I think we've identified what type from 79E you want, where you want it citywide. I mean, I think we could, that's probably enough.
Work with that. So that's my opinion as far as where it goes based off of where we started.
Take a
An
pause?
office conversion.
Office commercial.
We can have, I'd make a motion that we request that city staff work towards housing opportunity zones and office conversions with 79E being citywide.
I'll join you on
Well,
We need
I
a
don't think,
quorum to do this?
yeah,
Do we have a
But we
quorum
can
now?
all agree with you.
there's
Don't
13.
we
it. I thought you met at the
Don't
council.
we have
I
a
thought you
quorum
met
now?
at the council.
No,
As a
we as
committee.
housing
I don't know
committee
what
can
our
send it
number
to
is.
staff to come back with a
Oh, yeah.
proposal.
So we have a quorum?
No, I counted because you have 13 members.
All right.
And we're down to 6. We're a
Oh,
little
no, we're
short.
up to 6.
We're a little short.
This is for the development of the housing action plan, so once goes to council, then we can start working on the items.
Oh, we can't work until council tells us.
No, I think we can work in the background as we
You
continue.
can have an interim report from the committee.
Right.
Recommend this. Andrew?
Does housing opportunity zone supersede other zoning?
There's,
No,
No.
It's
it
like an
wouldn't.
overlay.
It's an overlay.
overlay.
Okay.
Right.
But that, I'm just trying to, we don't want to create conflicts in like a downtown district where we have a lot of very granular design characteristics,
Right.
but
Gateway,
No.
same thing.
what?
there's a lot of,
There's a lot of convoluted.
Yes. You can say that confidently.
We
You
all
don't want to
agree.
look at me.
It's just, it's an overlay.
Okay.
it's an
It's
overlay.
just for the tax break.
There's one more aspect of 79E, which is rehabilitation of buildings.
Does that fall under the office conversion?
No?
no, this is taking something dilapidated and making it something new.
Define that.
Like a fire went through a building and you need to rebuild it and it's in a downtown blighted zone and you need tax credits in order to rebuild it.
It has to be that severe, it can't just be like,
And where would that
taken
be?
care of.
I mean, I think that was the reason that 79E was created 100 years ago. I mean, it wasn't 100, but originally.
That's
Originally.
That's what the city of Dover had mentioned they'd use it for.
Yeah.
Exeter used it for that
It was
as well.
like to revitalize downtowns that needed
I-
incentive.
Our downtown doesn't need revitalization for the most part, so.
Well, that was.
That's what, I mean, we
Just
could,
one
we could
vacant
say we
house.
don't think the downtown is fitting for this, if we wanted to give boundaries, we
But
could.
it does not have to be currently residential.
No,
I think Dover used it for the old courthouse, that project.
Yeah.
And they got some affordable units out of that. But, you know, old courthouse, brick built, 1880s, empty.
I always looked at it as those brewery buildings that are now apartments. It would have been, I think, a really nice incentive had we had it back then when those
Yeah.
were done. That's what I think of what 79E was originally for, and we were just a year or two too late when I first brought it up.
I mean, I can't think of any other off the top of my head.
Current courthouse building in Arlington.
You mean the one on Parrot Ave?
Yeah, I mean,
It's hardly ever used.
It's the-
I'll be there next week, but it's hardly ever
it
used.
is being,
That works.
courthouses being consolidated.
That makes sense though, from a 79E project.
I'm struggling with where Parrot Ave is and where you guys
Where the
are.
middle school is,
Oh,
that's Parrot Ave.
that's a courthouse? There's a courthouse?
No, the courthouse is next to the Parrot Ave lot.
So next
on
to
Parrot.
Hopeful Phoenix office?
Yeah, in between Parrot Ave, that's the Portsmouth
That's a
District Court.
courthouse. Okay.
She clearly has never been arrested.
Not yet.
Well, not locally.
Not locally. Yes, that is the Portsmouth District Court.
God, who hasn't been in there?
That would
Great
be
parking after hours.
We all learned on planning board recently, I didn't realize that the city actually, the Parrot Ave lot, the city owns all the way up to that building. So that, like, the parking spots all there are all owned by the city.
Oh,
How'd you find that out?
I said at planning board. I was like, oh, we didn't know that. The things you learn.
So, Peter, if there was an old house in a neighborhood, could we offer this a 79E incentive to turn it into a triplex and make one of them affordable?
Assuming the zoning allows it.
What if there was a recent project that got denied at the Board of Adjustment that now they're gonna reconsider what they're doing, and it's got a whole bunch of bedrooms in it that could be apartments. Chase home.
Dreamy. How
Would that fall under the housing opportunity zone?
Make it citywide.
Yeah, because like traditional 79E, which is I think what what we had just been talking about was only downtown village center.
The problem with that is the underlying zone. With that specific lot, right? So as Peter said, it has, the
Single
underlying
residence
zone has to allow it. That's in single residence
B.
B.
Yeah.
So it's already totally non-conforming because it's
Pre-existing.
pre-existing, right? So it's in the single-family neighborhoods, single-family residential
Well, look
district.
at that building.
Yeah,
Never
it's a
actually
beautiful-
seen
Brick
it.
building, right?
When
Brick
we do
building, I
something
mean,
about
it's just,
We did a Rotary project
just did one.
there. I did one.
Are they thinking about leaving that space?
They are thinking of, they went to the zoning board, so, to build a building behind it. They were denied, oh no, in front of it, sorry. And they were denied butter resistance because it was closer to the road, all sorts of reasons. Wasn't my project, I was just there listening. For a
I
different
heard about it.
project after. And now I think that they're reconsidering the project and doing something else. And one of the, as an observer, one of the things I think came out of that was the abutters and the BOA said, you're not telling us what you're gonna do with that building later on. And it was because they didn't know, or I think they didn't know. And so it's there. And so it not, the amount of money you have to invest to bring it up to speed for Chase Home is cost prohibitive. So they have to build new. When they get done, move in there, it's gonna be this building that's
Sitting there empty, cause they're,
sitting there empty and it's tiny dorms.
so renovating that building would be, 79E could help with a building like that.
But we have a zoning issue.
So that
Sounds like.
means we also would enable, in our treatment of 79E, we would enable that rehabilitation.
We would, but they could not expand outside their walls because it's the underlying zoning, right? Don't you think? You guys tell me for sure.
I mean, I'm hesitant to talk too much about a specific property,
Eric's not on a board, he can do that.
yeah, but again, I think.
Just underlying
the
zoning, if
underlying
you had a
zoning
brick
would
building in
allow-
any SRB,
It's all public
It
info.
only allows one single family dwelling, so yes.
right,
I
so,
agree.
but it's an existing non-conforming use, so even to renovate the inside would probably require a variance, right?
Oh, yeah, it would absolutely trigger zoning.
That's what I'm just trying to point out. So even if 79E would help them renovate the building, renovating the building in any way, shape, or form would require a variance.
Yeah.
Because of the underlying zoning.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if in that case, it would fall under housing opportunity zone or office conversion because it lists nonprofit and that it would qualify that way, zoning aside.
So it could help outside.
I think what we're getting to is there are a lot of properties in the city that could benefit from the
Rehabilitation.
rehabilitation. And it's not zone or location specific that we need to look.
So that argues that we should, the council should adopt that.
So all three aspects now. We've talked housing opportunity zones, office conversions, and rehabilitation.
We got a little skittish about coastal resiliency.
We did. Just a wee bit.
So,
I know a certain counselor that's gonna be upset
Conversion
about that.
in 79E
Yeah.
is,
It is one of,
yes.
I don't think I have my booklet with me, but it was in, the booklet, yeah.
you look. So to going back to Jen's question, how do we get to some ordinance language? Is that step too far?
I mean, I think we need council to want to move forward with it.
So we could send a, well, not tonight because we don't have enough people, but we could send a recommendation to council that at least on this one aspect that we're putting into the housing opportunity zone, we would like to
And then
see
direct staff to
develop a draft of what it would look like for 79E citywide enabling housing opportunity zones, office conversions, and revitalization.
Is that our only directive to council.
Well, we can't make that directive right yet.
No, I mean, this is gonna be the housing action plan.
Right, it'll be part of the housing action plan, but
Okay.
if we wanna
Well, we
keep
can
moving
make
on
it-
with it,
We're gonna
let's,
We can get them moving.
we wanna get started on it
So,
sooner
yeah,
rather
I
than
just
later.
mean these other elements will be.
It'll be part of that, yep. It's just we're already jumping on that.
Yeah.
Short term, it means short term.
Short term means ASAP.
But that's great discussion. Been rattling them around for a while. We can-
4+ years for me. I've been talking about it since February 2022.
What's next?
Comprehensive zoning. It says audit, but we suggested changing it to update.
Please.
So this, your recommendation is after the master plan update.
Right. And it would include a lot of these things, including
Right.
Looking at our lot sizes, looking at our districts, looking at,
I hope not longer, but yes.
Usually we have.
you know, we look at expanding multifamily zoning, residential conversion, which was
Instead I have plans.
referred to planning board and they said, wait till the master plan. The cottage housing cluster, we have that currently in our gateway. We could look at those requirements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that could be short term. The rezoning outdated OR and general business, that's something you could continue to look at, I think. It says long term, but.
So, why don't we just go through them one by
Yep.
one?
So at the last meeting, you know, this comprehensive zoning was a big item, and but after the discussion, everyone's like, well, all these other zoning issues kind of fall under.
Which are all the blue, right?
Draw the blue. And
Right.
so some of them were voted on, but then there are, you know, all these down at the bottom that were also lumped in.
I mean, this sounds like a comprehensive zoning revision.
Right.
Yes.
Which is not gonna happen overnight.
No, but in some ways, maybe there's consolidation of some zones and,
Getting rid of some old zones.
and just
And looking
simplify.
at our dimensional stuff and resizing lot sizes for a lot
Make
of
it
these
more
districts
what's-
that are.
Yeah, make it more what's existing.
Right.
I was interested to read that Dover Housing Task Force and their housing navigator ended up asking their county planning, Stratford County Planning.
It's not Stratford County, it's just Stratford Planning. We're not county-based.
Stratford Planning.
It goes by the county name.
No,
No.
it's just the name. It doesn't have the word county in it.
Yeah, like Rockingham Planning
It's
Commission.
it's RPC, it's Rockingham
RPC.
Planning Commission.
So SPC did an audit of their zoning and had recommendations for each of their residential and their classifications.
How do we do that?
We could hire RPC to do that.
Oh, you're gonna pay them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They don't do that stuff for free.
I didn't know.
Even for all the tax money we give?
That's,
They do it, trust me, all of their circuit riders and all the stuff they do, I mean, if there's a grant, they'll work within the grant boundaries, but most of their hourly rates, I know because I help set them, are well below any market rates, and that's subsidized by dues.
Beth, in your work doing this, have you engaged any AI
In doing this work,
in like thinking about zoning and
No.
changing?
I have not. I'm a little scared of it as an attorney. I use it very limitedly, like I'm looking for a telephone number and address.
Yeah, but
And it's really good at that.
but like it's also really good at look at my zoning, tell me how to build more housing. Like,
Yeah.
I did it today. It was incredible. Do you think that we could not use Rockingham Planning Commission for that and use maybe someone at the state level or in a different county?
Huh.
Do
We
feel-
can hire any consultant we want.
Yeah, you can hire anyone, but why a different county?
Well, Rockingham Planning Commission, by and large, is going to be biased by what they already know. So the underlying tone that they already have is based on their perspective of what Portsmouth is, has, and can be. But if we take somebody from the outside and bring them in, we may say to them, do your worst and tell us what you've recognized in other parts of the state. And by that result, get a better outcome.
I think the plan is to hire a consultant to do this comprehensive zoning as soon as the master plans, to tee it up right when the master plan's adopted, to get right into it.
I mean, I think that
We're hiring someone no matter what.
having a consultant,
Yep.
not county,
I did not know that.
We have typically always hired consultants that are not based locally. And that's why we did UTIL for our master plan, right?
Right. And I think that that's a good idea. One of the things, when I go searching through Rockingham County or Stratford County, they have a thing called model ordinances, and boy, you look at an aquifer protection ordinance, and everyone is the same except it has like one or two words that the planning board implemented that screws up everything, but they're all cookie cutter when you're dealing with whether it's RPC or Stratford.
Well, it was interesting reading. If any of you want to look it up, you can look it up on Dover's website. But, you know, they basically said enable single-family housing to go up to 4 units everywhere.
Which isn't single-family housing anymore.
Got rid of
Single-family
Gotta-
zone.
It's a general residence zoning.
Right, but as you say, they got rid of single family. So it makes interesting reading. So can you, Peter, talk about dates that the master plan gets done and then the zoning revision with an outside consultant, and what the schedule for that is?
So hopefully the master plan will be done
Spring.
on this,
End of
this year, yeah. They're drafting now, hopefully. I'm hoping late fall, but we're gonna try to push them to, be done by then. And then, but, I think once we see the end of that process, we'll start putting out, either RFP or RFQ for somebody to do the zoning.
Updates. Based off of the master plan results, and a lot of the data will already be there. They
Right.
just have to now look at the zoning, look at the master plan, and put the two together. Make the zoning actually reflect the master plan.
Right.
That's the hope.
God forbid UTL was sitting here right now.
And so you're recommending get rid of the outdated office research and general business districts,
Yes,
that's
all of those.
afterwards. Expand multifamily.
MRB, MRO,
That's after the master plan.
Yep.
Lot size and dimensional requirement updates, that's.
all after the master plan. It's a long list after we get that information.
So that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 short-term items.
So I guess, there's an item for cottage housing, which we have currently, but, if we revise that, that'll probably be as part of the comprehensive audit or the update.
I mean, developing the in lieu fee option is already in our zoning, we just have to expand it.
It's just in the G9.
Right.
Right. That's why we just need to expand it to other areas, so it's
That
not
could
like
be-
having to start, all over
It's
again.
just like putting text in the other part of
Right.
the ordinance, so that could be short term, that could be,
How do we incorporate that into like Gateway?
So that's one of our short-term things.
so I'm gonna, for time frame, I'm gonna say 1 to 3 months. Just to,
It's awesome.
I mean, unless you think,
Let's work on that change in the parking.
that's almost primed, that's primed, I just gotta get
Oh, good.
the chairman to,
I'd forgotten about
Did I
that.
see
Oh, I haven't forgotten.
Is there a House bill on the governor's desk about parking?
I don't have the bandwidth to track those things in
Oh,
my
okay.
head.
Yeah, I think there
I'll be
was.
ultimately honest. That's what legislative committee's for.
Different than one per unit? Is it less than per unit?
simplify form-based code, that would be.
Well, I mean, they
part of
changed
the
parking
zoning.
last year, and we already adjusted our
That's
zoning
gonna
to
take,
it.
that's gonna take a long time.
Yes.
Live, work, zoning,
Well, we're already gonna have for the live work artist space, we're gonna have that
Art space study.
art space study done. But we just moved the money as to how it's getting paid for.
so is that more short term, or is that, you think?
I would think, because that actually will be funds available hopefully July 1, so they already have somebody lined up to do it that they've talked to.
6 months.
6 months?
I would say 6 months, yeah.
Is that new language in the live work zone?
No, so the arts and cultural plan actually called for a specific, you're trying to stretch my memory to remember everything we talked about like several months ago. But it was to do a study on how in our city we could get live workspaces, right? How could we, with zoning and incentives or overlays, or how could we get more artist live workspace?
They actually go out and talk to people in the arts community and I think even look at properties.
It was in the CIP.
How you could fund it, what the funding sources would be. They come back and say, here's your places you could do it.
I figured this is a place we should probably let everyone know. So on Monday, when Councilor Tabor and I and a few others were here till 12:30 in the morning, we did move the funding out of the CIP for that and actually put it into the Housing Trust Fund.
That was
So
the
our-
65,000.
So it's now, as long as the trustees say it fits within the trust that we created, they'll give their sign off, and then it can be funds out of that instead of out of our CIP.
Facilitate room rental, home sharing, we don't really regulate that. I mean, we don't regulate if you rent a room to somebody.
Well, unless it's for short term. It has,
Right.
we don't regulate it 30 days and above. Just make that clear.
We don't have any barriers to having roommates.
Right, home sharing, yeah, we really, you can't,
How would you monitor that?
well, never mind monitor it, how do you even incentivize it in zoning? You really, you can't. I have a big house, if I have a bedroom I wanna rent out to somebody long-term, I can do it.
So we suggested to remove this from the list, and then also seasonal worker housing. I mean, we feel like the co-living
Is seasonal worker
addresses
housing.
that. I don't
Yep.
know what else, we would adopt for specific for seasonal.
You've got year-round workers that can't find housing.
Right.
So we think the co-living addresses that.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason to leave those in there is if it's some kind of marketing effort that we as a committee should do, but it's not really.
We hire a lot of hotels. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Sorry. No, that's okay.
I can just, I mean, how do you guys feel about those?
I feel like we just answered those questions.
We almost
Okay. Yeah.
We now hire them through a program that finds them housing. think we have a whole lot of control either.
Workforce housing ordinance,
How is that different from what we have?
I don't know, I didn't,
It's the idea of strengthening it, but I don't know if we could legally do much more than what we have.
When you say strengthen it, what does that mean?
I'm not entirely sure how we could strengthen it, that's why I don't know. I personally can't think of ways to strengthen it,
I mean, is
I guess have more
strengthening it
flexibility.
weakening it, or
Right, does it? I don't know.
It's there. We've,
It could certainly be part of the audit, they could look
we
at
have to review this RSA versus ordinance.
Right, and see if there's any major differences, or maybe it could be part of the audit, they can look at it and see if there's a way to make it so that people are more apt to use it. Affordable housing overlay zone, it's an interesting concept. Just not sure how
Right
many
now.
more overlays we need.
We're trying to simplify.
We were trying to simplify our zoning, more and more overlays just.
Billboard on the highway. I think that's solved by our HOZ.
The housing
A little
opportunity
different, but
zones.
it gets the same thing.
Yeah,
It
you're
gets to
kinda-
the same way, I agree.
Preaching for the same thing.
I feel like it's sort of a duplicate of what we've already talked about.
well, but the parking questions. the
We're gonna fix
dimensional
that.
Requirements.
They're discretionary and they might change.
I mean, this is saying do it through an overlay, and we're saying do it through zoning.
Do it through through incentive, financial incentive.
Yeah.
As opposed to regulatory or zoning incentive.
More discussion on that one?
Well, we already have other places we're looking at dimensional requirements. We're already looking at anything that's multifamily, 3 units or above isn't gonna have parking in the ordinance anymore, so there's more flexibility already being built in there. I just feel like piecemeal, we've already are addressing some of these, so do we need a whole overlay that deals with it as well?
Still live in New
I'm-
Hampshire.
We do still live in New Hampshire.
Still don't have public transit.
We still don't, even though I keep begging.
We have no revenue raising for public transit.
Ain't that the truth?
Fee structure review, I don't,
Yeah, all in on that.
done annually.
I mean, we already waive like permit fees for any not-for-profit, so if you're talking like,
I mean,
You waive fees for the PHA project.
yeah, anything that creates housing, I think we should look at the fees.
Well,
we do on fee study
No,
committee.
creates workforce housing.
okay.
Creates
I'm sure my
affordable
clients almost jumped up and down on that one.
We look at fees every year.
housing. That was, what I said was unencumbered by the thought process.
True workforce housing projects are usually built by not-for-profit developers, in which case
They come to the council and ask for.
they come to the council and ask us anyways on a case-by-case
I mean, I'm just
basis.
gonna
Do
say
we
this
need
is
to have
all
more
going,
than that?
yeah,
Yeah.
It's
That's a good way.
ADU tax incentive.
So that's a pretty interesting line right there.
Five-year property tax exemption for new ADU construction value would have to fit under a 79E.
Is that a property
Concept.
tax increase exception or just property tax exemption?
It's basically a 5-year
For the
freeze.
ADU value.
It'd be a 5-year freeze, right?
It doesn't say that.
But that's the exemption, that's how we would have to do it in order
The new
to.
ADU construction.
That's why I'm clarifying, because it does not say that.
Yeah, it really should say a 5-year property tax assessment freeze for the increase, so it won't increase for the new
It's not
construction.
a freeze, right? Because if you're
It's a freeze on the new
new construction,
Construction.
yeah,
As
like an
the-
abatement on the new construction.
Yeah.
the value of what their tax assessed
New-
will not
new
have taken,
improvements.
will not take in the improvements for at least 5 years. Is really what it is.
I knew that that's what it meant, but that's not what it said.
I don't disagree with you, but that is what it should mean.
It's an interesting one, yeah.
It is interesting. Do we think that the people who are building ADUs are thinking about that?
I mean, it just, when I was doing my garage, I just looked at the construction cost and I said, no way. I didn't even
Think
get to
about
the taxes.
Not to mention, anytime they're in front of the planning board, people have come out and said it. You know, we're doing this because our parents are moving back, or we're switching places, and the parents are taking the ADU and the kids
Kids
are
move
taking
into
the
the
house.
house.
And so people generally volunteer that information, and most generally, that's been the story.
Which is then the parents are helping pay for it, right? If it's
Yeah.
the parents or the kids or whoever's coming back, they're gonna, yeah.
Or it could help someone who's like that I don't know, there could be a chance where it could.
There may
There
be
most
an
certainly could
opportunity.
be.
Why,
It's like the parents can't really afford to move elsewhere. I don't know, I'm thinking it through, although
And at the end of the day,
they
if
could
that
do
is
construction.
if that's the case, and they're charging their kids anyway,
I just
there's
thought,
going to be more regulation for that kid to go through to prove the income constraints
restriction.
I just
that they are within it.
talked to somebody in my neighborhood who built an ADU, converted a garage or a shed. It was actually a tool shed into an ADU.
Big shed.
Who lives in?
No, they rent it, and they get visiting nurses, they get Navy Yard folks.
A lot of contractors that are here for months at a time.
Yeah.
That need someplace
And
to crash.
she said the visiting nurses have the same housing stipend, $3,500 a month. And the minute she goes below that, she's swarmed with
Right.
applicants.
Mm.
So that's creating worker housing.
That was one of the reasons for co-living. We were really hoping we would attract people like that to be able to
Sure.
stay in co-living.
So
So, this may be something to look into.
I think we keep it there. It just,
I think we keep talking about it, yeah.
Affordable housing fee waivers, I mean, this is kind of
Same thing as
as the fee structure.
structures, yeah.
I'd like to see us move on that. If you're giving us a public benefit with below market housing for this incentivizes some more. Makes sense. Folks from the private sector, is that?
If we have 79E and we're utilizing a HOZ, which is 33% affordable units, doesn't that contradict it in some capacity at 25%?
Well, this is talking about planning review fees and
I'm
all
aware.
that, not the
Or
long
wouldn't we
term.
want those figures to be aligned?
It might make sense. Yeah.
You're saying for 33% of the units, you could waive the permit fees for those.
Listen.
And get a
Listen, if you want to waive all the fees, for sure, sign me up. But I feel as though they should be aligned just for consistency and continuity of somebody that's reading our zoning and saying, when do I get to start dropping my fees here?
based on the percentage of
Right.
affordability.
So if there's 33% of the units, does that equate to 33% of the,
No, 79E says 33% are affordable units.
right, but how does that equate into
you get a
what
33%
percentage?
coupon.
No, you,
Discount.
whatever I'm not changing the message here, I'm just changing
Cashback.
the percentage.
Yes.
Right, that's
to
what I'm
match
asking
the
you.
percentage of the
Well, what
affordability.
this right now says waive, which
Waive.
means
That
100%
means 0%.
coupon.
Waive or at the end, or review fees with projects with 25% plus affordable units. You're just saying,
No, it doesn't say or.
No. Waive building permit, impact, and planning review fees for projects with more than 25% affordable units.
and you wanna make it more than 33% units.
All I'm saying is I think there should be continuity between actual RSAs and our suggestions.
Yeah, doesn't really matter.
Maybe it doesn't.
No,
Maybe I'm wrong.
I think we're all, 25%'s a good whack at it.
Okay.
I mean, I think that it's something nice, but that's not what's gonna make or break the project.
That was my question. I know
Right.
when Tracy Kozak was on the committee last year, she said it's speed.
Which is our next one.
Good segue.
Oddly enough, it's a good segue.
How about that?
That last one's a little bit.
I mean, it's gonna be tough.
To expedite review.
Technical, I mean, it really gets held up in TAC, which is,
Right.
So if they don't do a good set of plans,
they need a good
it's not
engineer.
fair to,
They need a good engineer.
to everyone at this end of the day, including the developer.
So how do we expedite? That's always been my question. How do we, I mean, I know the process and I've not ever come up with a good solution on how to expedite, so how do we expedite?
And there's a whole notice period.
Right.
that-
Which
that you
is
have to
also a problem. So it takes like 3 weeks to get notices out now.
What is the senior property tax deferral? Is that in process? Is that something that exists right now? Because it says expand.
It is
I'm
in
not sure.
existence.
I was gonna say, we have,
What age does that take place?
well, it's different percentages. It starts at 65 and it goes, but there's different levels based off of your age range.
Right.
I can tell you at 80 and older is the biggest cut, but every year we look at those and we just increased the value.
Yes.
We have the highest, I think, in our region for the
So
most
that's
part.
a tax exemption.
Yep.
For roughly 50% of the value of your house.
Really?
If you're
Of certain age.
qualifying, see, but it has income.
It has income restrictions as well, so your income has to be a certain level too, so.
Which is?
It's all different for all ages. There's a whole chart. I cannot tell you off the top of my head. Read the chart.
And there's,
We look at it every spring.
and there's a cap on assets as well.
There's a cap on assets, there's a cap on income, and then it gives you,
I don't know.
Sorry.
go to the tax assessor's office, I'm sure
Doesn't work for
that she
us.
has all of those there. Yeah, there's a tax on income and assets. But your house does not,
That's
as an
ongoing.
asset, does not
And
count.
then I
The
also.
assets are cash in the bank, for the record. I did ask that. It doesn't include your home. It includes cash in the bank.
What now if it's in a trust and I have nothing?
They're gonna see through trusts are pass-throughs for tax purposes.
Yeah, she's so sweet.
Sorry, that's legal.
Okay. Well, we've been at it an hour and a half now. and
We can
Thank you.
we'll work on this some more and
We have better direction and starting to refine it quite a
I
bit.
think we made progress considering we didn't have a meeting.
Or a quorum.
I wish we could have voted on 79 E.
I gotta go.
We were one short.
I'm sure it'll
Clock's ticking.
happen.
Hey, sorry I was late. I was trying to get documents done.
Oh, we got to approve last.
No, we can't.
We can't, we don't have a quorum.
we'll just keep carrying
Our
on.
next meeting, July 9th.
I know, it's really.
I think so. Is that the second?
Second
Oh
Thursday.
my God, were you?
Yes,
I've never lived before.
I know,
Yeah.
the smile.
July 9th.
July 9th?
Yeah,
the smile was really big.
This is one,
It made
there's
all
actually
fussiness
several units upstairs, but
weekend
they
worth
were,
it.
felt
this was
like
just after
6
COVID.
weeks.
I worked so hard. We ended up renting, this was like a one-bedroom unit. We had that entire hour, so.
Yeah, there was like a night where we
I
were
was like,
Thanks,
yes,
everybody.
you
cluster feeding and fussy at the same
can
time.
stay 2 nights.
We couldn't figure out
But that,